I need to ask you all a simple question. Do you know why we give/donate to places such as Africa or Asia or any other country? Why they can't solve their own problems? Well, the reason being is that in multiple continents such as Africa, there has been multiple droughts that have led to the death of millions, mainly because of the decrease of crops and food storages. One of the greatest examples of this devastation would have to be the country of Zimbabwe, who has had about 5 million people face food storages, as well as people facing poverty due to those droughts. Which is why I believe climate change is a serious problem, and that has created both poverty and hunger. So today I will be talking about suggestions that can be able to help Zimbabwe. Before I start, I have to say this little quote I found by the United Nations. Nearly 5 million people in Zimbabwe, half the country's rural population, will need assistance by next year as a result of the ongoing drought in southern Africa. Well, by the United Nations. There has been multiple reasons why this saying is true. One of them being is that climate change can tire out and even harm workers with extreme heat. On outsideonline.com, the average human being works best at a temperature of 70 to 77 degrees Fahrenheit. Droughts, on the other hand, release high temperatures that are extremely dangerous to people. At best, workers that in Zimbabwe are experiencing heat that is about 90 degrees Fahrenheit. This could lead to illness, stress, disorders, and even heat distortion. Then there's the main problem that climate change also affects plants with no rainfall. In SafariBookings.com, there is little to no water in Zimbabwe. For crops such as corn, there's needed about 0.10 inches of water per day, maturity of course. But with the lack of water, it will simply dry out and die. Without the government, Zimbabwe says it's trying to buy grain from neighboring countries. From a quote of the Alzeria.com. It also stated that it needed about $1.57 billion with the effect in February to December 2016. Since the government is now owing debt, that doesn't lead to high success rate to solve the problem. Zimbabwe citizens are threatening to overrun the government, believing that the government officials aren't best suited for this problem. Of course, this isn't the first time that there has been ongoing drought. Zimbabwe has had multiple droughts in the past. The problem is, though, however, is that with the instances of CO2 and fossil fuel emissions, droughts are more frequent and more dangerous. If you think upon the fact that a lot of times climate change caused a large amount of harm to most civilizations, it isn't surprising that Zimbabwe has been ruined because of the ongoing drought. The book Empires of Food states, quote, "Droughts have always been an existential problem for agricultural societies since they first appeared." End quote. One example would be the Romans, which the book also states 17th century, on the other hand, was entirely less comfortable with a little ice age stunning diets across the world, driving irritable masses of war. Another example would have to be the Mayans, which was one of the strongest civilizations until Spanish came, had to, quote, filter into the highlands where they remained, as well as abandoning their cities, quote, due to droughts. Most times these civilizations didn't necessarily face the problem head on, but rather try to find solutions that would prevent it if it ever happened again. These solutions at certain times made things much worse for late civilizations. As I previously stated, the Romans did they created wars in order to gain land and resources, while the Mayans migrated from the original area, leaving behind their cities. This results in multiple wars causing multiple deaths, and leaving behind cities also means rebuilding everything and forced more labor onto other people. What you can learn from these two civilizations is that it's better to face the problem rather than trying to dodge it. To be fair, these civilizations didn't really have much of a choice because they weren't technologically ready to grow their own crops anywhere, nor did they have the access to gain crops that work with droughts rather than against them. Zimbabwe, on the other hand, does have a chance in order to gain crops that's far away, as well as creating buildings that can be able to use that be able to manipulate the climate in order for crops to grow. Yet, according to Alzeria.com, the government is only investing, quote, trying to buy grain from neighboring countries, which is not facing the problem in general. There are at least 3 things Zimbabwe can do in order to solve the crisis of droughts ruining crops. The first one is greenhouses. What the government can do is that it can be able to invest in greenhouses for small countries rather than focusing on the country as a whole. Sorry, what I meant to say small communities, my bad. Anyway, this will allow the average crops to grow for minimum people, alright, that won't be heavily affected by the droughts. Of course, there's the problem of money and the expenses. HomeAdvisor.com states the average greenhouse costs about $13,000 and is way too small for multiple people. Luckily, some college students were able to create a greenhouse that was twice the size and also half as much. Derez and Penn State greenhouse use standard hoop houses, configurations, and like used, quote, random polygreen compliers, plastic glazing, and lumber, end quote. Also, the money was given to Zimbabwe in order to help human needs, where we're 1.5 billion with like health charities. I believe it is a possible solution that Zimbabwe can be able to try to invest in greenhouses with the help of multiple charities and give it to their local communities. Drought plants. Another suggestion would be to use plants that support the condition of heat more rather than denying. There's an organization known as SIGAR that is working on climate crises and successfully been able to create crops that are resistant to drought. They claimed in an article, one way which SIGAR has successfully responded is by developing varieties of major food crops that are drought tolerant or escape droughts through early maturity. The only problem, however, is that Zimbabwe isn't really on with like GMOs or genetically modified crops. In the website Circle of Blue, it states Zimbabwe restrictions on importance of genetically modified crops, limiting the amount of corn and other grains that can be produced in South Africa, another regional explorer. With that in mind, the government can either give up the restrictions on genetically modified plants or GMOs, or try finding other ways to grow crops, which leads back into the greenhouse. Stop droughts. The final solution, since has many complex problems, and it's probably the most unrealistic one imaginable. People have already tried this. Is that what they can do is that they can ask the United Nations, and they can be able to do a restriction or minimization of the amount of smog that creates climate change. Of course, there are multiple problems, including that jobs would be lost, and it would take a large amount of time before the high-end droughts are finished. So, like I said, I believe this solution isn't unrealistic, while the first two are realistic. The problem is more complex than it's stated to be. Droughts create so many problems that people in Zimbabwe are even questioning and at the verge of overthrowing their government. But still, I personally believe that the government could focus more on micro ideas, such as investing in greenhouses and buying drought crops from farmers, then they would survive. If they do that, they might be able to have a chance of surviving future droughts. If these solutions not only will solve hunger, but also poverty, economic growth, and decent work, as well as sustainable cities and communities. But if the government can't be able to either afford greenhouses or still create a ban on GMOs, then it might be much harder for them to support their citizens as well as themselves.